Hey guys, it's Tiny Tom Logan back with another video for you. Today we're going to be taking a look at the new GTX650 Ti Boost. And it is a little bit of a complicated one really, why they've added all these extra names on and stuff, but to make it really simple for you, this one's now got a boost. So maybe it wasn't that complicated after all. But just to let you know some clocks and stuff, it's got a 760, no it hasn't actually, it's got 768 CUDA cores. The clock is 980 megahertz, but with the boost it goes up to 1033, but as we'll show you in a bit, we actually realised with ours we were getting up to 1070 megahertz on the core of our card, so the boost was going that little bit further for us. Whether yours will be limited or not will really depend on how lucky you get with your card. Now I've got some notes here for the GTX 560 as well, and you'll understand a little bit more why in a minute when we start to compare stuff. But the 650's got 768 CUDA cores, the 560's got 384, and then the clock is 980 on the 650 but 823 on the 560. And the reason why I'm telling you this is they are actually quite well matched. Some of the benchmarks they're kind of level pegging. Some of the older benchmarks like Vantage and stuff, you'll see the 650 ever so slightly pull in front, but when you get them into games they're very, very closely matched. But I want to try and save more of that stuff for the conclusion and stuff, and the card that we're going to be looking at is a reference one. It's come straight from Nvidia, so there's no branding or anything on it. Essentially, if you get a reference one with the reference design cooler, it'll either be made by Nvidia or one that is exactly the same as what Nvidia would specify anyway, so there won't be any changes on it. But something that you need to remember, because people always say, should I get, you know, an Asus, or shall I get an EVGA, or shall I get a Zotac? When it comes to the reference cards, the difference really, the cards themselves won't be any different. The only thing that you're going to vary with the price is it comes in the box, the warranty, and really how much the vendor thinks that they can charge you that little bit extra. So if you are going to get a ref card for water cooling or for whatever other reason, the only thing that I would say is go for the best deal that suits you. Obviously a lot of graphics card manufacturers do like to give games away, so that can sometimes sweeten the deal. But really for me, the thing to kind of weigh it up is just price and warranty. So, you know, just a kind of little bit of a friendly hint for you there. Anyway, what I want to do is I'm going to bring you in. We'll have a good look at the card itself. As always, we'll then go on to look at benchmarks. I'm going to do some gameplay stuff separately so that you can have a good look at the quality of the gameplay and stuff like that. Because the thing with the 650 is it's been heavily aimed at entry-level 1920 by 1080 games. Now, if you have a look at the link underneath, because we've got the main view on Overclock 3D where you can see all the games and all the graphs and everything, so you can compare it to all the different other cards. We've run this the same as we would any of our other graphics cards. So we've put this under the same kind of stress that we did the Titan, which means all of the games are maxed out as much as we can do. So it's a worst case scenario type of thing. We've only done them up to 1920 by 1080 because it's not really capable of larger resolutions. But the reason why I'm stressing this to you now is that if you were to be thinking about buying this, something to keep in mind is if you do turn that anti-aliasing down a little bit, then your frame rate will take a big step forward. But it's not really fair for us to do you know, 5 different tests at loads of different anti-aliasing rates. We prefer to just assume that you guys can work out that if you do turn your settings back down a bit, you know that your frame rates are going to go up a fair bit as well. It doesn't really take a rocket scientist to work it out. But anyway, I'm going to stop this bit of the review now. We're moving to having a good look at the card, and then, like I said, we'll get the benchmark sorted out, and then we'll wrap up at the end in a tasty conclusion. Right then peeps, time for a close-up look at the card, and it is a very familiar Nvidia design, but we will cover that in a little bit. As you can see, we've got the large, I say large, it's it's not massive, but at the same time it's not small for a card that we'd be used to carrying the 50 brand. We've got 2 DVIs, and then we've got a HDMI and then a full-size DisplayPort. See, you've got the little bit of grill up on this side for the hot air to come out of. Now, it's worth noting that it's only got 1 SLI connector, so that means you can only run 2 of these if you're actually going to SLI them. The GeForce GTX bit, that's just printed on the side, doesn't light up or anything like a Titan or anything. And there's only 1 6-pin power, but what you can see is that the power connector doesn't go right to the end. And that's also because, as with some of the other cards that they released recently, like the 660 and the 670, it's got quite a short PCB, and then we've got the fan adding on to the end. Now, I have to admit, when I first saw it, I was a bit like, or when I first saw the 670, I mean, with this extended bit, I was a bit kind of about it, because with the 670, that's kind of a big money card. Now, I know we have got 670s now on 680 PCBs, but what I meant is, it's where it's a big money card, it almost felt like a bit cheated. But with a 650, where it's quite so much cheaper, I think it's quite nice that they've tried to make it look that much bigger. Now, to put it into context for you, this is a 670 in this hand, and they are the exact same size. There's not really a massive amount difference on the back either. With the 650, we've just got a couple of cutouts, and really the only thing that you can tell between them is the extra PCI Express connector and the extra SLI connector. So if you were to have, your friend was to have a 670 in your rig and you were to have a 650 in your rig, you'd have to be pretty clued up to be able to tell them apart, because there's no discerning labels on these. I know these are Nvidia samples, but you will get reference samples like this available from the vendors. Quite often they end up having like a sticker up here or something. But if you end up getting one with one of these coolers, it's going to be pretty hard to tell between them, especially once it's face down in your rig. So really, with the 670, like I said, this was quite a bit of money. So it felt a bit weird that something so expensive was on such a short PCB, and it kind of messed up wiring and stuff like that. But when you're talking about the 650 being in such in the budget range, and being quite an entry level, I actually thought that it was this kind of design is much better placed with this, and I don't kind of dislike it so much. And I have to admit, the more and more we do with this, the more I'm kind of warming to it as well. Now, what I'm going to do, I'm not going to unbutton this on camera. What I'm going to do is Nvidia on their FTP, when we get all these stuff new, there's some pictures on there of it with just the PCB. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to flash up a quick picture now of just the PCB of the card, so that you can have a look. A bit of nerd porn styly stuff, and then after that we'll go in and look at some benchmarks and all of those kind of things, and then, as I keep saying, right at the very end we will break into our conclusion. Right then peeps, a few quick benchmarks. So on the left hand side, this is the 650, and on this side that's the 560. So that's the older, kind of better generation there, so a notch up. And yeah, you get what I mean. Anyway, on the left, as you can see, 5,836 for 3D Mark 11P, and then 5,382 for 3D Mark 11 on the other side. So you can see that we've got a 500 point difference there, which is a fair bit for such a low end card. But if we move over, yes, I know I should always do the out print screen. People always say it, but it's force of habit. It's an extra button I have to press. As you can see, again, we've got with the 650, we've got a 200 point difference there, which is, again, it's still a fair old amount. Don't forget, you can download these benchmarks free and run basic versions of them if you want to test them with your own system. If we move on to Vantage, Vantage is the one which is an eye-opener, really, because something else that we have to kind of consider is that these are beta drivers as well, because the cards aren't officially out yet, and we've been sent drivers by Nvidia, so generally they get better as well. But if you have a look, we've got 25,222 for the P score here, but then 19,000 over here. But something else that I want to say is, if you have a look at the CPU scores are quite a bit different. Now, even though this is the 560, so we can't put this score down to PhysX or anything like that, because they're both Nvidia cards. This was a weird score that we got with the 560s at launch. It was fixed a little bit later, but this is the original review that we did and that we based all our stuff on, so I'm just pointing that out. So the scores that we really need to be concentrating on are the GPU scores. Now, the one on the left hand side, as you can see, is 21,840 against a 17,926. So you've got a good nearly 4,000 point difference there. So that's a good kind of indicator, is to go by these rather than the overall score. And if we go on to extreme, again we'll look at the GPU score. We've got 11,207 versus 9,191. So again there you're looking at a good 2,000 point difference. Just going GPU to GPU. So even though this is a lower end card, you can still see that there is a fair old bit of punch there, really. And as I said to you previously, it's worth remembering that at launch the 560 was a 225 to 250 pound card. So it's £75 cheaper, and it's only what, a couple of years later, and you're getting better performance. So it was just something I wanted to kind of like mention, rather than comparing it with XX AMD card or anything like that. So I just thought this was a nicer way to give you something, a different way to look at the performance scores. Anyway, I am now going to rattle on and we'll move on to the next bit. Right then, peeps, conclusion, and as ever we're going to tell you the awards and then we're going to explain to you why, and we'll do it all as we always my brain really isn't with it today. Now what we're going to do is we're going to give the 650 Ti Boost the Value for Money award, but also we're going to give it the Gamer's Choice award. You can pick these up for around the £144 mark, or at least that's what Nvidia are telling us, because I'm making this the video before the NDA gets lifted, which obviously means there's no retailers at the moment with stuff listed, so I'm going by the prices that Nvidia are saying. I would expect some of the other AIB or vendor cards or whatever to, the price to go up a little bit more depending on the clocks they put on them and the stuff that they stick in the box, as I said about in the introduction. But you will be able to get them for around that £144 to £150 mark. Now, we've taken a very different approach with looking at this card in that, normally we go all about the frames per second and benchmarks, and generally we look at all the high-end stuff. But it was really an eye-opener for us. Both myself and Steve-O, who's actually just sat there, who did all the gaming type stuff for me. But we were massively surprised how well this did in the games. And by that, what we meant was, as we said, we run all the games completely maxed out, and the card did do really well. There was a few games where things may have got, a little bit slowed down and stuff, but if you do turn the anti-aliasing down a bit, the card runs pretty much everything at 1920 by 1080. And it's only £150 card, and yet we were playing Far Cry on it, we were playing Crysis 3 on it. We were playing Tomb Raider on it, and Tomb Raider, it may sound like a pretty easy game to be able to play, but it's not, especially with the hair stuff. I know the card hasn't got Tress effects, but it does make a massive difference. But anyway, so it's incredibly capable. Now, one of the things I said to you at the beginning, the reason why I was comparing it to the 560 is they are, in everything pretty much, but 3D Mark Vantage, they are very, very well matched. And you may think that's a bit strange that, the old 560 is only as good as the 650 now, but something that we do need to kind of put into context. So when the 560 was released, it was a £225 to £250 card. So yeah, now they've got the same sort of performance out of a 140 card. It's on a much smaller PCB, it uses much less power, it's much cooler. It's actually a good step forward, and it's a nice benchmark as well, in that for 150 quid now you're getting a card that will play pretty much everything. And if you don't mind turning the settings down a little bit, I know that with the way Nvidia have marketed this, is that they don't, you know, the gamers like to have stuff running at high. And that's, you know, that's all well and good, but with games like Far Cry, if you do turn the anti-aliasing down a bit, the game's that nice to look at that you can't really tell that much difference, that you have knocked it down a little bit. But it will make a huge difference in the frames per second that you get with the card, and the gameplay and the smoothness of everything as well. So that was what I would say with this. I know Nvidia say you can run everything at high, but I would say get in there and have a good play with it and get a nice balance. Obviously you want a minimum to be about 30, but your average can be there as well. It really depends on the game. Some games, when they dip below 30, don't look very nice and they will play terrible. But a lot of games, you get around that 35 to 40 frames per second average mark, and they're perfectly fine. So what I would say is just get in there, and as you would, I don't know, you know, whether you guys will play around with your game settings, but it is, especially if you're going to spend a lot of time on it, it's worth having a little bit of a dabble. Get Fraps running, you can pick it up for free. Record your min-max averages and just see to yourself, what happens if I turn the anti-aliasing down, you know, a notch, going from 8 to 4, for example. And you'll be surprised at how much difference it will make to your results, and then obviously your end experience. But something that I will say is, we've had quite a few discussions about this card, and generally for me personally, say for instance the 550, I never even really thought about it that much. But I am massively surprised with how good this is for the money, and for the fact it is their kind of entry proper, like basic enthusiast card. And if someone come up to me now and said, right, I've got about 150 quid to spend, what do you think I should get? At this present moment in time, considering I've not looked at the 7790 yet, I would be saying the 650 Ti Boost rather, because it is a very, very good card. I also do like with this one, I know they've extended the, it looks a lot bigger than it is because of that extra cooler, or the extra girth there, but you can't hear this card for toffee. It's so quiet, to the point where it's that quiet that you can actually hear like stuff going on in the power supply and stuff, because we obviously sit here and they're like trying to work out whether the fan's spinning up a little bit more, whether we can hear any caps squealing or anything like that. And the card's so quiet, we were hearing other stuff. And it's not really until you actually put your ear on the graphics card that you can hear anything. And even then, you can only hear the electrical stuff in the card. You can't even hear the fan. It's brilliant. And also, the extra girth on the card, as I showed you, because it looks exactly like the 670, other than the extra PCI Express slot on it, it does make it look more expensive, which if you're keeping the standard air cooler on it, as most people will do, because it's not really a card that you're going to want to water cool, but if you're keeping the standard cooler on it, it's going to make it look that bit more expensive either. And it's not really, unless people get really anal about the power connections or asking you what's in there, that you'd really be able to find out. I would say at this present moment in time, this was sat me on my arse so much about how good it could be for such a small amount of money, that I may even start doing a lot more of these lower end graphics card reviews, just to see, how good it, stuff can get. Obviously now we're going to be inundated with the board partners like Asus and Nvidia and all that lot. So we will be doing other reviews of this, and it'll be interesting to see what they can bring to the table. Like when they start adding their own coolers on and their own overclocks and stuff like that, to see really whether it's going to be worth adding another 50 or 60 quid onto the price of this in the first place, because I think that in standard form this thing is blinding. So I am very impressed with the card. The reason why we've not given it a gold or anything like that is it doesn't set the world on fire. But for, say for argument's sake, for somebody out there that is building their first budget gaming rig, or you have a very limited budget and you want all new bits, then this could well be the card for you. It really depends how much you want to spend on your graphics. If you've only got that kind of around the £150 mark to spend, and that is a very tight budget for a new card, then this would be brilliant. But one thing that everyone needs to kind of bear in mind is if you had a GTX650 Ti Boost, but then you were running, say for argument's sake, a 3570K at 4.6 gigahertz, and like, I don't know, like a gigabyte UP4 or something like that, but your rig's going to be used for gaming, your system specs are going to be a bit skew-if. This really is a card to be used with a lower end, a much lower end system, because if you're going to be building a gaming rig, most of your money should really be getting spent on the graphics card. CPU does make a difference, but not enough that you should buy a better CPU and save money on a graphics card. It should always be the other way around. Obviously you don't want to be running an i3 and a Titan, but you've got to get some kind of balance. So with this 150 quid, you could be talking, if you had a maximum budget of like, I don't know, say 500 to maybe £600 total to be spent on your system, this would be the ideal card to kind of match in with it, really, to be fair. It is very, very good. And say for argument's sake you did end up spending the upper end of 600 quid, I would be expecting to see like solid state drives and some nice bits, good brand name stuff as well. But anyway, I'm going to end up going round and round in circles. For 150 quid, that's where the value for money, 140 quid, sorry, that's where the value for money comes in, because you do get a lot of performance for your 150 notes. The gamer's choice is where, at that kind of 1920 by 1080 resolution, it plays pretty much everything. And as I said to you, if you click on the link below, you'll see that it plays everything maxed out. But if you were to knock the anti-aliasing down a little bit, the frame rates do take a fairly big chunk upwards. So that's always worth looking at, if you're not that fussy about having everything absolutely maxed out. But I'm not going to go round and round in circles anymore. This has been quite an eye-opener for me, and I've actually really enjoyed doing this. But for now at least, this is Tiny Tom Logan with the Nvidia GTX650 Ti Boost, which has won the Gamer's Choice and the Value for Money Award out. Ding! Broke. I'm on a fucking mad one today. Cut! I'm really not in the mindset for this.